the foundational embodied spiritual practice, as I see it, is some dedicated time to silence. Now, my preferred form of doing that is meditation. It's not the only preferred form, but a dedication and orientation to silence. And if you think about it, just to become aware of the silence in and around you, that itself is an embodied spiritual practice. That's actually the essence of what something like meditation is. I like to think of meditation as you're listening to the quiet spaces inside. And this foundation of silence that's really been shared by almost every contemplative spiritual tradition, there's a good reason why they've all had some emphasis on quiet. And it's not simply quiet for the sake of being quiet. It's not even quietness simply for the sake of feeling good, although quietness is very, very good for us. It's good for our minds. It's good for our brains. It's very good for your body to be quiet and still. In the beginning of endeavoring to pay more attention to quiet, it may be a lot of times when people first start to do some sort of quiet, silent-oriented practice, the first thing you notice is how noisy you are often, and that can be a kind of surprise to notice how noisy mostly the mind is. But as you come to ease around that, which is really so important, then almost more important than the practice is the attitude with which you do it. Because like I said, we can utilize, and probably a lot of you, I utilized it in the early days this way, we can utilize a spiritual practice, say like meditation, as a form of seeking. Like we sit down, I'm going to seek after the truth or enlightenment or awakening, and it becomes this sort of very goal-oriented thing, or I'm going to try to quiet my mind, and it often ends up with a kind of frustration, because as soon as we're in the future, so almost any goal is in the future, right? And so when we put the goal into the future, we're already in a state of division between where we are and where we hope to be. And a lot of people, their whole notion of spiritual practice gets kind of contaminated in a way. What I mean by contaminated, I mean they start to get a negative association because their spiritual practice really becomes a form of embodied seeking. And okay, we're, for a certain period of time in our own spiritual evolution, we're seeking. There's no reason that if you feel like you're seeking or striving or yearning to pretend like you're not. I was like a grade A seeker. I turned seeking into like an Olympic sport almost. I was seeking so profoundly. It was suggested to me by my own teacher that maybe I didn't need to seek quite so stridently, quite so ambitiously. And yet, as a 20-year-old kid, even though I would listen, I didn't really know how to do anything else. So sometimes we just got to be honest with where we are. In fact, anytime, it's always a good idea. Just be honest with where you are, Because we can have an idea that, we need to let go of seeking. And it's, as ideas go, it's a pretty decent idea. But you can end up just seeking to let go of seeking, striving to not strive, right? Trying very hard to let go. But look at it this way. The essence of spiritual practice, but even spirituality in general, the essence of it, what is a kind of prime consideration, something of profound importance, is simply the willingness to be honest and real. In other words, it's just to be where you are. Just to be where you are, to feel what you are, feel what you feel, to not be pretending, to be more or less evolved as you are. What useful spiritual engagement needs, it needs us to simply be where we are, to just simply be honest about it. If we're seeking, we're seeking. If we're not, we're not. It's fine to be told that maybe some forms of seeking, if you're grasping really hard and you're always imagining spiritual awakening or enlightenment or God or something in the future, it's good to be told that that's an orientation that isn't so productive. But what I see sometimes is when people hear that seeking can get in their way, that it's like they pretend like they're not seeking. They seek to not seek. When really, if you're just honest with wherever you are, with whatever you're experiencing at any particular moment, the issue isn't whether we're seeking or not seeking, striving or not striving. It's, are we engaging with our immediate experience of being in a way that's spiritually useful, that's constructive, right? It's a matter of what are we doing with our yearning? Where is it oriented towards? Is it oriented towards the future? Or we can take that same seeking and orient into the immediate experience of being. So we're exploring our immediate experience. Then we're not in the future. So to just be where you are is an absolute requirement. And that's not only for someone who's beginning, that's all the way through your whole life. It's part of what it means just to be honest, to be real, to be authentic. So, as I see it, that most spiritually useful thing is to start with right where you are.